For my research paper, I decided to look at the causes and effects of online fan engagement on television shows. I decided to use Rick and Morty as my example for this. Rick and Morty is an Adult Swim show that just finished up its fourth season. It follows Rick Sanchez and Morty Smith, they're a grandfather and grandson duo, as they adventure throughout the universe. The show has a lot of sci fi themes and other um, space adventures and stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting and also has a lot of fan engagement. So for this project, or for the paper, I looked at three different studies about online fan engagement. The first one was a quantitative analysis of what factors most encouraged fan engagement with shows. They found that first and foremost, the quality of the show was the biggest determining factor, and that second after that was the creativity and innovativeness of the fans. So in the case of Rick and Morty, I looked and I found that the show had high ratings on Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, above 90% from both fans and critics on both of those. And for the innovativeness factor, I was able to find a lot of fan art, including a Pinterest page that had over 1,400 entries. The second study looked at Game of Thrones and its Twitter engagement. The study found that the show had a lot of Twitter engagement, but that where it really left things on the table was in terms of having the show be more interactive and having creators and actors on the show respond to fans. And I looked at a interview with GQ with Dan Harmon, the creator of Rick and Morty, and he talked about an incident in there where they had an interaction that was very unique to Twitter that he was able to have with a fan when they were about to premiere the third season, which was coming after a long hiatus, and he'd been being badgered by fans asking when it would come out. He was allowed to respond to one fan and say, "Would you like for me to premiere the show for you tonight? Is that what you'd like?" And the fan said, "Yes, of course." And then he said, "Well, here you go, turn on your TV." And then the fan turned on and saw the premiere. So that was a cool story about how the show does have two-way fan engagement. The third study I looked at was a brain study, which actually did brain scans of people as they were interacting with a second screen device while also watching a show. And what I found was that, contrary to what you might think, that when you use the second screen, you actually found a higher level of viewer engagement with the original content. So they were looking at this as it pertained to advertisers and said that this presented a lot of opportunities for advertisers to get involved and have better product integration and placement. So when I looked at Rick and Morty, I didn't have any information on the second screen usage of the fan base, but what I was able to do was look at the different advertising campaigns that they've been associated with. First, they had a big Carl's Jr. ad campaign in 2017, and more recently they were featured in a Pringles Super Bowl campaign this year and a Wendy's campaign this year. So from that, I inferred that they probably have a lot of interaction with their fans and that different advertisers see them as a valuable piece of intellectual property to associate themselves with. In addition to that, I also looked at some of the different effects that this has had on the show, the high level of online fan engagement. One of these was in the lead up to the third season, they added women to the writing room for the show. And after this, there was a lot of negative fan backlash online, which was very sexist and blamed the women for the perceived declining quality of the show. And went on to dox them and reveal their personal information. The show's creators spoke out against this, but it's something to keep in mind that sometimes sometimes people get possessive with shows when they have a high level of interactivity. The second situation I looked at was the Szechuan sauce incident from the beginning of the third season. In the show, Rick makes a joke that his entire arc and character motivation is to get the Szechuan sauce, which was a promotional item from McDonald's for Mulan, which came out in the 90s. After this, it led to a lot of fans demanding that McDonald's release the Szechuan sauce, and then when they did, but didn't have enough supply of it, there were not riots, but scenes caused in McDonald's across the country by fans who acted very poorly. And the last thing I looked at was an episode from this season where the writers, in a meta way, addressed the fans. They have a character in the episode who's called Storylord, who stands in for the fans and is using Rick and Morty for their potential and to harness his machine, which diabolical machine. It's a convoluted episode, but at the end of the day, it turns out that the writers are saying that the fans are asking for all of the major developments to come in and huge plot lines to be developed will burn out the show. And so I analyzed that. So basically, my conclusion was that there are a lot of drawbacks possible from this, including burnout for the writers and also boorish and sexist behavior, both online and in real life from the fans. But when you get down to it, they've had a lot of success and they got a 70 episode run ordered and also have had a lot of critical and financial success. So that was my conclusion.